today. Which, by the way, you'd be surprised how often that happens. Well, guess what you just did in that moment? You just in yourself. That goes a long way. Because when you actually do, even if you think about money, if you take money and you begin to invest that money, you get a lot more serious about it, don't you? Because you didn't just spend it on yourself, did you? You're investing something. It takes emotions. It takes commitment. It takes effort. And one of the things that I don't see in general, when I say churches, I should just say universally the church, I do see and I do get to meet some incredible, amazing people that when you get around them, man, you just know that this person is a builder. Like, you ever met somebody like that? They're just oozing just encouragement to you. They just want to build you up. They just want to be a blessing to you. And if we have somebody like that in our lives, it's like, man, I love that person, right? How many of you, though, are meant to learn, obviously all of us are, but to build each other up, but we're so busy still trying to deal with ourselves that we're never investing in other people. Learn to actually build each other up. Encourage one another. If you're busy building up another person, it's a lot harder for you to nag on somebody because of their difference. Does that make sense? Because you're not sitting there going, well, this is not how I would do it. This is how you do it. That's not the way I would do it. The way you're doing it in your mind, you start getting prideful about it, right? And you're like, man, that's just kind of dumb. And then you get an attitude with that person. Well, in that moment, guess what you're doing? You're focusing on your difference instead of focusing on your commonality that we're a brother and sister in Christ, or brother and brother in Christ, or sister and sister in Christ. And we need to be building each other up. All right, number 2, recognizing the value of every person. This is huge. If you want to be somebody who builds a culture of unity within our church, or if you want to take this home and start building this in your family, or with your marriage, or with your kids, this is a big one. But recognizing the value of every person. We all recognize the value of people we like because they're like us. Does it make sense? But God says that he died for the entire world. Why? Because he values everybody here. And as a child of God, me and Casey may be different, but I recognize her value. She recognizes my value. And if we ever have a difference in opinion, we're not focused on our difference so much as in the fact of, wait a minute, she may have a different opinion on this. Well, man, I value her opinion. Why? Because she's a child of God. Why does she value my opinion? Because I'm a child of God. We're not so focused anymore on our difference, but we're more focused on how can our differences make us more powerful. Does that make sense? It's all about where we're concentrating on. Number 3, focusing on what's important. I mean, have you guys ever heard this? Like, do you really want to die on that hill? Have you ever heard that before? You ever heard of like people arguing about something? Or maybe you even thought to yourself, like, am I really going to argue this and break up this relationship and hurt this person over this argument? Really? Like, right? And there's something that we have to really think about. Focus on what's important. I was just telling our small group this last week when it comes to unity, and I've got to pick on this. And if you're new to church, you got to, please don't broad brush Christians, by the way, right? Because Christians are what? Humans. Right? So it's not a Christian issue, it's a humanity issue, division, because of our pride. God's just calling us to do different through his Spirit that we could be more unified. But focusing on what's important. So for instance, I remember I saw in my small group, we were talking about unity. And I was like, I've got so many stories because as a pastor of seeing people do things that created unity, but I've also been a part of a lot of things where division was created. One of the funniest ones, and really not funny, but it's heartbreaking, is I had a friend of mine who had a growing church. They were growing, they were doing well, and they had an older building, and they decided that they were going to paint the building. They were going to paint the building. The building was definitely out of date. It was struggling. It needed some love and some TLC. And then they decided to paint the color. It was like an off-white type of a color, a little bit more of a beige to it, kind of a deal. And within 6 months, the church completely divided. There was like the entire church literally just divided. They divided at the initial argument of that's a stupid paint color. Why would they paint it this color? And within 6 months, guess what that argument turned into? People were saying stuff like, that pastor doesn't even care about us. He just doesn't care. It's all about him. And what was really interesting about it is it wasn't even his paint color choice. But that's when the devil begins to get into what we're focusing on. That's things that aren't really important. When we're focusing on things about like our differences instead of our commonalities, it gives the devil a chance to manipulate and create chaos where we shouldn't have let him in the first place. Does it make sense? We have to focus. We have to be, me and Austin, we love this word together, but intentional. We have to be intentional about why we're arguing, why we're having this conversation. Why is there a difference here? Do we really need to fight over this difference? Are we really going to die on this hill? Am I really not willing to recognize this person's value? If you're really willing to look at everybody's value, it changes a lot about your attitude. Here's the next one, limiting your liberty, or our liberty, out of love for each other. This one's really hard. This is another step type deal. But have you ever denied yourself something that you were allowed to do, but for the greater good of another person? That's a hard one sometimes. That's really hard. And so limiting our liberty out of love for each other. Again, you could use this one in your family, in your marriage, here in the church as well. Am I really willing to say, fine, I don't have to have it Y'all want to finish that? Oh, that one hurts, doesn't it? Y'all ready? I don't have to have it what? My way.